I'm Jennie Gage, and this is Life Take Two. Ever since Charlie Kirk's death, conspiracy theories regarding Erika's involvement in her late husband's death have been swirling like wild. And while some people do point to actual evidence to substantiate their theories, things like some public statements that Charlie Kirk had made regarding Zionism and the Israeli state, the J.D. Vance hug, etc., most of the theories are based on one talking point. She just acts weird. Her behavior is off. Most of us have watched a real-life widow grieve the loss of a beloved spouse, maybe our moms, our grandmas, a friend, somebody close to us. We know what that looks like. And a lot of us have also seen public figures grieve the loss of their spouses. Jackie Kennedy is one that people cite a lot as a comparison point for Erika Kirk. So yeah, Erika going immediately onto her husband's podcast and standing at his funeral with a smile on her face and hugging it up with J.D. Vance, they seem really off. And her wild widow behavior is leading a lot of people to think that something's off, and that something's off must be that she had something to do with her husband's death. I don't think that's the case at all. And I personally think it's dangerous for us to blame Erika Kirk for the way that she's grieving, because it takes the focus off of where it needs to be. And that is squarely on Christian nationalism, and especially the brand of Christian nationalism that we're seeing manifested in MAGA, which is supported by rich donors and fascist ideologues that have a very specific form of Christianity that is causing widespread trouble across America today. And I know this firsthand because I spent the first 48 years of my life inside of Christian nationalism, white supremacy, what would eventually become MAGA. I was an alt-right, prepping Mormon trad wife, just waiting for Jesus to come back and take us all up into the clouds. And not only was I just as crazy and bizarre in my behaviors as Erika Kirk, I was probably twice as crazy and weird and far out there as she is. And it wasn't my fault. I was a product of the machine. I had been groomed my entire life to be exactly what they wanted me to be, a brainwashed little puppet. So today I'd like to dive into some of the evangelical brainwashing that Erika Kirk has been the victim of, that has groomed her to be this weirdo that we're all seeing on our screens. And the only way that I can explain this is to dive into my least favorite place today, and that is Jennie's MAGA confession booth. So I have some juicy and incredibly embarrassing personal videos to share with you today. Like Erika, I grew up in a high-demand religion. Of course, mine was the Mormon Church. And my religion wanted to make sure that I was obedient and compliant. And if I tuned in too much to my own critical thinking skills, my own logic and reasoning, and especially my own emotions and intuition, then those would tend to lead me astray. So from the time I was a young girl, I was taught to doubt my doubts. That's an actual quote from a Mormon prophet. I was taught to put a smile on my face. There's a Mormon youth ministry song that literally goes, "If you chance to meet a frown, do not let it stay. Simply turn it upside down and smile that frown away." I was taught to trust in the Lord with all mine heart and lead not unto mine own understanding. In all my ways acknowledge him, and he would direct my paths. I was taught to be the light shining on the hill. One role that religion plays for humans that's somewhat beneficial is nervous system regulation. Let me give you an example. As a middle school girl, one of our dogs died, and I really didn't shed a lot of tears about that because I gave it to Jesus. I would spend tons of time kneeling by the side of my bed, saying my prayers. I would listen to happy church music and do everything that I could to numb out, because I had literally been trained that if I started to feel sad, I could just say a prayer and give that to Jesus. That kept me from actually feeling feelings. And sometimes the actual doctrine of the church, like your dog is in heaven, maybe you'll see him again, because all dogs go to heaven, right? Sometimes the actual doctrines would then regulate my nervous system and calm me down. That didn't mean that I was actually processing emotions or that I was happy on the inside, but I was really good at numbing out. And through religious self-hypnosis, I was able to make myself intentionally dissociate. Last year, an amazing journalist from France flew out and did a documentary of my life, and we pulled out my Mormon diary. She went through all of the photos and some of the little keepsakes that I had tucked into the cover, and then she had me read some of the entries in my diary. And it really jumped out to her how much the smile on my face did not reflect the words that I wrote on the page. Here's a great example. This picture was taken just a couple weeks before this diary entry, February 1996. I've never been so unhappy in all my life, and I don't see any hope ahead. I'm battling constant and overwhelming discouragement and depression, and I live with this husband who doesn't understand or care. I try to tell him that I needed support and encouragement more than anything else, but he doesn't care. I have no one. I'm so isolated, so lonely. I can't confide in Jake. I have no self-esteem. I have no ambition, no happiness, nobody who cares. There are times when I want to die. This is really sad because I was just a 20-year-old girl. Anyway, this film crew, as they dug through my diary, was just absolutely blown away because they were never deep inside of a Christian cult. And they didn't understand why the girl in the pictures with this smile, this is me graduating from my Mormon junior college at age 19, why the girl in the pictures with this smile did not match the words on the page. And it's because of this, because I was giving everything to Jesus. I don't feel any reservations when I pray about this relationship. I know that Heavenly Father will bless me, if not in this life, in the celestial kingdom. In this entry, I say I take things too personally and feel things too deeply. I'm living in a world of pain, and I sometimes give in to fear. When you're part of a religious community that teaches that Jesus is the answer, that he is the balm of Gilead, that you can cast your burdens on him and you'll be happy, what you tend to have happen is everyone inside of that religion has to act happy. They put their Jesus masks on. And I did this for a couple of reasons. Part of it was I had just, like I say, been groomed to do that from the time I was a child. Like, give it to Jesus, put that smile on your face. If you chance to meet that frown, do not let it stay. And so part of, I think, what we're seeing in Erika Kirk is just lifelong habit. One of the reasons I say that is that on Erika Kirk's social media, going way back, she talks about giving hard things to Jesus. So this isn't Erika Kirk's fault that she's like this. The modern American Christian patriarchy is selling snake oil in the form of Jesus as this magic pill that's going to make everybody happy all the time. So they brainwash little girls to act happy all the time. You're always happy. If you've never been to any random megachurch on a Sunday, which I left Mormonism to become evangelical Christian, and so I spent 4.5 years doing that, and my life would be completely falling apart. I'd walk into church, every single song is about casting some burden on Jesus, right? He's the way maker. And despite my ex-husband abusing and harassing me, despite major medical problems, I would stand there in my big non-denominational church with all the smoke and the lights, pumping my hands in the air, tears streaming down my face, a big old smile, thinking, Jesus really is magical. He's taking away my pain right now as I sing this song, because I'd sing that song about the Waymaker and I'd regulate my nervous system and I'd numb out and I would stop myself from having to process anything that I was going through. And that leads me to the second reason why I always had a smile on my face despite journal entries and a life that was not something that I should have been smiling about at all. And that is virtue signaling to the people around you. So sometimes even I was aware of the fact that like my heart is breaking or I'm under stress or just I feel like I'm crumbling inside. But when I was in front of people, like at church, bearing my testimony, teaching the young women on Sunday, at a barbecue with some of my other believer friends, I knew that I had to put that smile on to show outwardly my inward belief in Jesus Christ. And that right there is where the dissociation began, because I was self-abandoning and fractionating from what was internal. I was operating in full dissociation. My outside mask of Jesus has this, I believe in him, I trust him, I'm smiling through the tears, was completely incongruous with my actual emotions, with the chaos and the fear and the pain and the depression and everything happening inside, to the point that I know I just posted on my channel here that just 2 days ago was my 7-year anniversary of surviving unaliving. And that day that I was so hopeless that I didn't think that I could ever be happy again and I could not go on, that day before I decided that I couldn't go on anymore, I went out and saw all of my customers. I visited one of my neighbors to pay back $20 that I had borrowed from him for gas, and I had a smile on my face the entire time. I have a content creator friend, some of you may know, she's a knitting cult lady, Daniela. We've done collaborations and had conversations together, and I absolutely love her books. Her new book has just dropped. The Culting of America would actually be really helpful for everybody to read right now. So run, grab a copy. Anyway, Daniela was in the Children of God cult, and the women in particular were groomed from a very young age, no matter what type of trauma and abuse they were going through, to have that smile on their face, because they served a couple purposes within the cult. They were the bait for new recruits, so they had to have a smile on their face so that other people would want to join their cult. And they also were there to let their light shine with their testimony so that they could keep existing members also believing in the truth. Everybody was kind of reinforcing everybody's belief in the church by being happy and putting a smile on their faces. So for me, I remember one time when I had been very, very ill. I had an ovarian tumor. I was very sick after surgery for that tumor. I caught a superbacteria. That's why I had a near-death experience in 2013, was a result of a superbacteria called C. diff. I was septic. So I was very sick. And I tried to keep a smile on my face. I tried to keep that positivity going all the time. And finally, as my health failed and I faced death and leaving my young children, obviously it got really overwhelming for me. So I remember sitting one afternoon in my bishop's office, Bishop Vander Hoff in Greenville, South Carolina. And I was there with my now ex-husband, Jake, and I was crying my eyes out, just like, I don't understand why everybody's praying for me, why I've always tried to live such a righteous life. And my doctors were afraid that I was going to die at that time. And I was very sick. I couldn't even get out of bed. I was in a lot of pain. And that moment of vulnerability where I actually showed the real emotions inside and not just that, oh, I know Jesus has this, pissed off my bishop. What I wanted was for someone to just wrap their arms around me and be like, it's okay. Yeah. Like, Jesus isn't the magic answer to everything. And yeah, it makes sense that you would be unraveling and, let me give you a hug and let me be here as you walk through this very painful time in your life. Instead, Bishop Van Hoff says to me, I don't understand why you don't have the faith to be healed. The fact that you're sitting here crying and telling me that you're giving up shows me exactly why Jesus hasn't healed you, because you don't have the faith. So I very quickly put a smile back on my face and I'd put on makeup and never talked about the pain that I was suffering or the fear that I had again. And it wasn't my fault that I acted like that. Again, that was the religious institution, their doctrines, the pressure that they put on me to be the forward-facing, happy face of their church at all times that did that to me. And that's exactly what Erika Kirk is going through too. And it got really, really, really bad and really weird for me when I was at the peak of the domestic violence that I experienced in the 24 years I spent with my ex-husband, Jake, where he was extremely abusive, sometimes just leaving and abandoning us without any money or anything for weeks and weeks at a time. And then I would find out that he had had a double life, which included drug use, which included dozens and dozens, as many as 100 affairs with paid girls. My doctor would discover that the yeast infection I thought I had had all one winter was actually 5 different STDs. I would spend months having injections of antibiotics and taking all kinds of medications to treat those. I'd also been exposed to HIV and Hep C through my ex-husband. My life was falling apart. And instead of just laying in bed crying my eyes out, I had been carefully trained to say a prayer and listen to some church music and give it all to Jesus and voluntarily dissociate. This video right here is about 6 days after I discovered my husband's double life. I went on a road trip and I did this little video for some of my Facebook followers to give them marital advice. And it's kind of fun. So this is my first day trekking. And I know I usually do videos on like healthy stuff. Last month I did a video on mental health and it got so many shares. I thought that this month, instead of just telling everybody to take probiotics and sleep more and juice and veggies, I wanted to share a little bit that I thought might help somebody. So here's my sermon from the truck, my like trucker girls nuggets of wisdom. We have been struggling in our marriage, and I'm just going to put this out there on a video. If anyone else has been going through some stuff, I want to tell y'all, like, we have been just struggling to the point that I thought it was the end. We both thought that this was the absolute end of our relationship. And you get to that place and it hurts so bad. Okay, in this next video, my now ex-husband Jake, who was my husband at the time, was having a complete mental meltdown during this time period. So what he did was he took off and he went to the Bahamas with his mom. And he basically told me to fuck off. So I went home to Oregon to stay with my parents. I had so much overwhelming depression and anxiety. And every morning I would get up and I would say my prayers and I would listen to those church songs and I would give it to Jesus. And I would walk out the door with a smile on my face. So this video that I'm going to play for you here, I'm going to completely gloss over what actually happened. On this morning, I woke up with a plan. So I had to call my therapist and have a screening. He had actually suggested that I go to an ER immediately. Instead of going to the ER, I said some more prayers and then I went to a parade. Say hi. You're on camera. I'm videotaping. Well, I woke up in a funk today. Not a funk. My life sucks right now. So I woke up in a funk, had to call my therapist for a little bit and check in because I was feeling crazy and had decided not to get out of bed now or ever. But here's the secret to life. When you don't feel like getting up and everything's completely overwhelming you and breaking you down and you feel like you cannot go anywhere, do anything, just get out of bed and go do something. So the Rose Festival parade is going on today. This is one of my favorite things to do. I was too depressed to even do it today. But I got up, put on some false eyelashes and my sweats, and here we are. My mom said that we had left so late that we wouldn't be able to find a good seat. Mom, you were totally wrong. I found a $5 parking place right by the Memorial Coliseum. And here we are, curbside, front row, cotton candy for breakfast. By the way, my own mom and my best friends and the people closest to me, my children, nobody knew what I was going through for several months because I decided that me and Jake were just going to work things on our own. I was going to let the atonement fix him, and I was going to let the atonement heal me. And when I finally started telling people, everybody was shocked. They're like, but you have seemed like you're fine. There was nothing wrong with you. And I have to tell you that when I left religion and MAGA 2 years ago, broke up with Jesus completely, ended my relationship with the Bible and Christianity in general, and found myself for the first time in my life without the nervous system regulation that Jesus and praying and hymns and my religion provided for me. It was terrifying to learn to process my own emotions. I've been very open about therapy. I actually saw my therapist this morning at 9 a.m. I have been with an incredible therapist who specializes in trauma and abuse for years. And one of the biggest things that she does for me is teach me to actually feel my own feelings and to process, whether that's happiness or grief or whatever, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm always crying on my YouTube channel. If you followed me for any amount of time, you know that I'm always like bawling my eyes out as I tell my stories. And that's because for the first time in my life, as I will tell a story that I haven't thought about since I lived it 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, whatever story I'm telling. It's the first time in my life that I'm able to look at the experiences that I lived through and connect with the emotions that I had while I was living them. So you guys get all of the tears that I wasn't able to shed inside of my crazy religious community that just wanted me numbed out with a big old smile on my face. So, did Erika Kirk have anything to do with Charlie's death? Who knows? She could have. But I don't think that the fact that she acts numbed out and that there's fake tears and that she's smiling on the podcast just days after Charlie's death, I don't think that that behavior is irregular at all. I think that she has very typical behavior for somebody whose brain has been fully washed by this weird brand of modern American Christianity. And one of the things too, with her like always looking up to the corner, that everyone's like, that seems suspect. No, that's what you do when you're dissociating. Like to me, that behavior where she talks and she's looking at the corners and she has this weird fake smile on her face, that doesn't tell me that there's any criminal behavior going on. That tells me that she's trying to make herself feel and think a certain way because that's what she was told Jesus would make her think and feel, when deep down inside, she's being very incongruous. She's numbed herself out. Here's who I'd especially like to hear from on this video. If you've been part of a cult, if you've been in any sort of high demand religion where your thoughts and your emotions were controlled, I'd love to hear from you on this video. Does any of this ring true to you? Thanks for watching. And as a little reminder, I have an incredible line of feminist-friendly merch that makes the perfect Christmas gift. I'll put that link in the description as well as the link to my Vanity Fair article. The journalist entitled it Tradwife versus Tradwife. It's so great. It just dropped this morning and I will put that down in the description too. Thanks for watching, guys. Mwah.